Hey, good morning, everybody. It's 8:30. We'll call the meeting to order. And our first item today is the approval of the agenda. And as the board knows here, we do have one agenda addition, and that is a communication from County Recorder Bonnie Rader.
Move to approve with addition.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Citizens to be heard. We have citizens in the office, but I think they're here in the room, but I believe they're here for certain topics. So with that, we'll move on to the approval of paying the bills and vouchers.
So move to approve the bills. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Okay, we'll go to our 8:35 item, and we'll ask Jerry Van Enberg and Bruce Albright to come on up. And this is the Buffalo Red River Watershed District 2014 funding petitions. And I would imagine, Mr. Albright, you're going to lead the discussion here. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Annually, we have come to Clay County for use of our taxing authority under Minnesota statutes 103D, which is the watershed law, to raise funds for a variety of projects and programs that the watershed district works on. And I've sent a summary, which I believe was included in your packet, that talks about those two levies. A year ago, we had 3 separate levies. This year, we're down to 2. The total taxation for the watershed district in 2014 would be $1,108,665, or a 1.34% decrease from 2013. The interesting part about the statute that I quoted is the fact that it needs to be petitioned for its use by a political subdivision within the watershed. So we are here this morning, I guess, to answer any questions you may have, and ultimately to seek your approval to use that authority in 2014 for the noted programs and projects.
Questions? John?
How does that, does it fill your budget? I mean, are you able to continue? I know you were short of funds last year.
Yes, based on our budgeting, we feel we'll be okay for 2014. You know, there's always lots of stuff going on. We're kind of starting a new era here with the watershed. We have been so busy the last 10 or 15 years with flooding this and flooding that and huge projects, and we're nearing completion or kind of getting some of those projects off the books. The Georgetown flood control levee is in all essence completed. We've got some cleanup there to do in the spring. Phase 4 of Oakport, going to be working diligently with our local representatives and senators, and hopefully the 2014 legislature to get the $5 million needed so that we can wrap that up. And then we also started construction this fall of the Manston Slough Restoration Project, which is a flood damage reduction natural resource project that'll hold about 5,000 acre-feet of water in Wilkin County. Drains into ultimately to the south branch of the Buffalo River. So we've been working on that. That is behind us. We've just got construction to do now in 2014. And when I say a new era, that means the next chapter for the watershed is to start looking at where do we go next for major flood control work. And we have identified 3 sites that we're going to be meeting with landowners on here this winter. There's some potential southwest of Barnesville in an area we call the Barnesville Township Study Area that drains up to Whiskey Creek in the South Branch, about a 26-mile watershed. We will meet with those landowners on February 3rd. Secondly, we've identified a potential site in Manston Township on the South Branch of the Buffalo River. We'll hold an informational meeting with those landowners. And the board is committed to meeting with the landowners on what we call the Sabin Coulee. That area is just southeast of Moorhead, drains directly into the Red River of the north, and we feel that that could have some potential major benefits for the cities of Fargo and Moorhead. So as we take that next step into looking at major flood control work, and as I've indicated in my letter, I think that's probably when the board is going to have to start making some decisions as to where are we going to get the funding secured to do these major flood control projects. A 10,000 acre foot storage project is going to come with a price tag of about $10 million, and obviously we can't fund that with the type of numbers we're talking about with these levies.
Yeah, the one that you're referring to, that's the saving that goes directly to the red. I would think that a project like that would have really interest from the Diversion Authority Board and those dollars that they've put up available. That just from what you're saying, it sounds like it would be a prime candidate for funding assistance. But there is that method to apply that's being prepared, and I would hope that that project and possibly the others could be submitted for it.
And we will in that regard.
Okay, good.
So, I don't know if you have any questions about the information that was furnished to you. Like I said, we're at 2 levies this year. What should be noted, I felt was somewhat of an interesting number, is the fact that our market value in 1 year increased by $1 billion with a B.
Eggland?
Expecting that's got something to do with it.
Well, how about that's the whole watershed, but we added to our watershed.
Yeah, we added to our watershed. The board just signed the order last night. At question for the new area was the eastern boundary. We have completed that hearing process, and the order will be filed with the Secretary of State probably this week, which will officially include now the new area. So in 2015, they will be taxed, for watershed projects, administration, et cetera.
And for Frank, who's a little bit new here, but now this process where it's petitioned to a board to approve this. For example, if one board didn't do it, you could go to another board and petition them or ask them to. But traditionally, the Buffalo Red has come to Clay County for that purpose, right? That's been historically where the dollars have.
That is why we're here.
Yeah.
The facts speak for themselves. 85% of the money we raise comes out of Clay County.
Right, and so it's appreciated then that we're the ones who are involved in making that decision. However, I've always said that we have other counties who have a part of this, and sometimes I kind of feel that we're just spending their money without their say-so in it. But the good thing about it is these recommendations that you're having have representation on your board from each of those counties. Right, Jerry? Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, that's even true for Otter Tail now, because in the past we didn't have Otter Tail represented.
Right.
Since the new area was added, of course they're not taxed yet this year, but in the future they will be. But yes, they are represented, and have an avenue for saying something if those counties have a question. And like you say, we come here, I take to Clay County. I'll say out of respect for the fact that Clay County is the major tax.
Well, there's another component to it why Clay County is important too, because it seems like that's where all the water ends up.
That's true.
From all these watersheds.
From our watershed.
The water ends up here.
You are on the receiving end of the other.
So not only do we pay, but we get. But anyway, so the action here then is you have 2 separate requests, correct? But yes, I have one last question, and this just goes to my area of Oakport. What are you talking about here about these transfers? What does that mean?
Okay. What we do at the end of the year is some of the mediation work, some of the projects, Stony Creek, Hay Creek, Stinky Lake, for example, those are retention areas that do not have direct benefit areas, so we just fund the maintenance of those projects through the 103D funding. The Oakport transfer of $55,000 was the result of an action taken probably 15 months ago when Oakport Township came down, asked for some funding assistance, and the board agreed to contribute $110,000 to Oakport, but the understanding would be split over a 2-year period. So we made half of that payment in 2012, the other half in 2013.
Okay, what's the board's wishes?
I would move that we have two resolutions here. They both have the same title, so I don't know, petition 1? do you have-
Petition 1 and petition 2, I guess.
They're the first, 1 and 2? I would move the approval of resolution 2014 number 1, which approving a general levy petition for the Buffalo watershed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign, motion carried.
And I would also move the second 2014-2, which is another general levy petition for the Buffalo watershed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Not all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion carried. Okay, yes, Brian.
When you have these gentlemen here, maybe for Commissioner Gross's benefit, talk a little bit about ditches, because that is a county responsibility that has been signed over to the watershed, and just a little bit about the importance of those ditches and the cleaning that you have to do. I imagine that's done with maintenance dollars from your levy that you've just requested and things, if there's a problem there.
Yeah, we've been active in that regard. It seems like we never run out of things to do on the various ditches. The watershed district has close to 300 miles of legal drainage systems. Becker, Wilkin, and Ottertail, Becker, Wilkin, and Clay transferred their ditches to the watershed. There were no legal ditch systems in the original part of Ottertail County. We will hold a hearing this winter to get the rest of the Wilkin County ditches now in that middle third that's been newly annexed to the watershed district. For the most part, those repairs and maintenance items get funded by assessments to those benefited landowners. So each ditch has a map on file. Some are newer than others. Some date back to the early 1900s when the ditch was first put in, and those are the people that still pay for that ditch today. We did major work on 3 ditches just south of Moorhead this year, this past year, on Clay County ditch numbers 9, 32, and 33. The good news there was that about 85% of that work was funded by a Board of Water and Soil Resources grant the watershed obtained for water quality. So we're going to be putting the one-rod grass buffer strips on those ditches. We're closing off the field drains, not closing them off, but putting inlet pipes in where the field drains just drained into the ditch. We know that those are known sources of erosion. So by putting a culvert in there, we control that erosion. And then we're doing a redetermination of benefits to bring those benefit areas current. So the work on the ditches, Brian, is going to be an ongoing thing given the huge volume that we've got out there. The goal someday that they would all be buffered and probably have their benefits brought current, but that's a work in progress.
John.
I think just more on that, for some counties, that's a major thing that they work on all the time is their ditches and all the things that we turned over years ago to the watershed. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the best action we ever did. They're turned over to somebody who understands water and understands drainage and understands the problems and so on. And we're not the experts on the water; they are. And so I think it was a very good move. But some counties will argue with you they would never give up that power. And I think it's something that they should reconsider. But.
And then, of course, there are some counties which have quite a maze of legal county ditch systems. They haven't done anything with them, and they're finding out now that they're in trouble with those.
The other question I have is the question we always have, is there any further discussion on rejoining the Red Board? Are we any closer?
I like to think so, yes. We are continuing discussions with that, and I think with, at least more optimistic now that we have some changes in the board as well. And the fact that something that we just recently did, we have a grant from the Board of Water and Soil Resources to hire a consultant to work with the board and the staff now to try and work out, one thing, a strategic plan, but also to look at, I think, some of these issues that aren't settled that the board needs to talk about, and that's one of them particularly. We have, in the past, it's been hard to just sit down and have a real heart-to-heart discussion about this because of I think, feelings about it and personalities, and I think now that we are to the point where we can do that with the board, we'll be able to sit down and objectively look at that. And as Bruce mentioned a moment ago, too, if we're going to go forward and look at doing some major retention sites, where's that money going to come from? Well, that's a logical way we should be looking, is rejoining the River Watershed Management Board, because that gives us the authority to levy a greater amount of tax. Plus, it gives us the help from them on a large project, and I think it would also give us help when we go to the state to ask for money. We're a whole lot better off as a group, united group, than we are going down there as one individual watershed district. So those are things, and I really believe that we're a lot closer, and I hope that there's some movement on that.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, Jerry, when you start talking about those in the group and the ability to get better funding, is there also a better chance to have access to the federal dollars that Congressman Peterson tries to get? That's for flood stuff too. Does it make a difference of which boards they're involved with that, or?
Well, the federal dollars will be ran through the Natural Resources and Conservation Service, so there's no prerequisite to be a member of anything to qualify for that funding. The other thing I would like to add, and I have alerted your county auditor in this regard, and is the fact that you do have 2 managers up for appointment/reappointment in Clay County this year, Jerry Van Amberg and Mr. Curtis Nelson, and we continue and appreciate your support to appoint managers that have a basin perspective. That helps in regards to the question you raised earlier.
Well, I speak personally. I'm looking forward to you reapplying.
I think I will. What else would I do? I'm retired. I could move to Florida and dry up, I suppose. But I find it challenging. I have the time, and it's interesting, and I have other things that I'm involved with that kind of fit with it. So I plan on reapplying.
I think good. I think you do a really good job on that board.
Anyway. Strategic planning should be done about the 1st of June, and we'd be happy to at least share copies of that report with you to look at where the district is at. And I did have them add a clause in there. They're going to be taking a look at succession planning. While I don't have any immediate plans to retire, they need to look at, where does this go 5 years from now when Bruce isn't here. So that'll be part of the plan.
If you keep your dangerous hunting, you might retire quicker than you think.
So, Bruce, we have a few minutes left of the time that was allotted on here, and we don't get to see you guys very often, and obviously there's a lot of questions that can come up with. And you were talking earlier about some of the projects that you're going to be aggressively going before the legislature for, and one of them was the Oakport project. And I didn't hear you mention, and I don't know if you know what the city of Moorhead is going to be looking at in terms of dollars. Do you kind of cross-communicate with them on that?
There was a flyer came out last night that I got from Jerry from Senator Eakin's office that said Moorhead would be looking for $14.7 million in this year's bonding bill. And those are his numbers, not, mine, or directly from the city of Moorhead. So
that doesn't include Oakland.
Well, that does not include Oakland.
And that's the part where I wonder if maybe there shouldn't be some kind of shared discussions with Moorhead, because Moorhead's a much bigger player at the legislative level, when it comes to those things. And And it is less than a year away now, and Oakport is Moorhead. That area of Oakport is Moorhead, and I'm sure that it would be in Moorhead's best interest to see that flood protection completed just as well as it comes into the city. So I would hope, and maybe, I don't know if it would be something that you and I could maybe talk to Bob Zimmerman and maybe get a council person or two to start talking about how we can go about convincing the legislature that both of these are important projects to get completed.
Yeah, that would be fine, Kevin. We'd welcome that opportunity. We do plan to hopefully meet with Representatives Lean and Marquardt and Senator Eakin before they start the legislative session, just to renew our needs regarding Oakport. Again, approximately $5 million. I can say that we've worked extensively with Kent Lacasmo, and he has a 3 or 4 page list of projects around the state of Minnesota, and Oakport now has risen near the top of that list for him.
For him?
And he would like to see that.
That's exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. And we would like, and he wants to see that project done.
Okay,
we've neared the top now where he said, we want to get some of these major, I just want to get them done and we're completed. So we're up near the top of his list in that regard, and
that's good.
That's good news.
That is really good news. Well, anyway, I just thought maybe if you're in town one day or something, maybe we could get over and meet with Bob and Zimmerman, and then he kind of has the pulse of the city council on those things too, and maybe we can get one of the first ward members, because that area will become part of their ward. So,
It makes sense that Moorhead, I would think, would push and want to see that accomplished. All right.
Well, whether it's half this year and half next year, but just so that it's something other than nothing being done, because it's been nothing been done for 2 years. So.
Well, for the part of Oakport which is east of the old coulee now, we've got a letter from FEMA that now officially is a certified levee. So for all of the people living inside kind of that phase 1 part of the project east of the coulee, Brentwood, Roland Acres, et cetera, inside the levee there, they should, when they renew their flood insurance, and we probably need to get a letter out to those people in that regard, but that's going to make a huge difference for them.
So that has now been certified?
That has been certified
by
yes.
FEMA.
Does that mean they do not need flood insurance? Or is it
No, it means that they'll qualify for substantially lower rates.
Okay.
So I can throw away that rate sheet that I got in the mail today then.
Which should, and that's, because there's been some assessments. I mean, the locals out there have paid. We started this, it's been ongoing so long that the 2% was one number, then it was a second number, then it was a third number, and so they've been paying, but they're going to start to see the benefits now.
But they got a very good buy.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
and that was thanks to the state and the watershed as well. But,
well,
I think that's something else.
Just a quick note, we've been participating, I know probably see John up at the Basin Conference this afternoon, but they've been doing their long-term flood study and their 20% reduction goals, and then their Halstead Upstream project, and the Buffalo Red has been a part of all of that. Through that effort, we've identified probably 15 water storage areas, large-scale ones, along the lines of North Ottawa, throughout Clay, Becker, Wilkin, and Ottertail County. So they're in the new area down there. And, those are not going to get built overnight, but at least they're on the books and something for the board to work on as time goes on. So the potential is out there.
Thank you for the good work you guys do.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, John.
Nice to see you guys. Yeah. Okay, our 8:55 item is award bid for the motor vehicle remodeling project. This is something that a lot of us have been waiting a long time for, and probably including a lot of our citizens. So this is going to be fun to see get going here. Robbie and Lori, you going to come up and join the party here? Mr. Berg, good morning.
Well, good morning. Morning, Mr. Chair.
Robbie, good morning. Good morning.
And Commissioners, you're kind of hitting it on the head. This doesn't mean that you're going to approve it for sure. We know we have to go through this step, but it is a real sigh of relief. This has been quite a battle to get to where we're at with the motor vehicle project. We've studied this for, seemed like the whole time I've been here. One of the first things was talked about is that it was a temporary placement out at motor vehicle, and when are we going to get some improvements out here? And so we've looked at a lot of different places and things, but you have a memo in front of you that talks about the bid prices, but I thought, first of all, I should hand out a little information that Georgia worked with Vicki and Lori's office in talking about some dollars. So I'm sure you still have a question of where the dollars are going to come from, so I'll hand this out. So, referring to the memo that you were sent in your packet, we are looking at a total bid price of $429,963, which does include 3 alternates on there. The alternates, the first one was the vestibule out front, and I think that was like in the area of $53,000, and 53.5, okay, 53.5, and then alternate 3 was the exterior windows. There's a huge window on the back side that was in the original bid, or is in the bid, but then there's 8 additional windows in the motor vehicle area that, after the architect looked at them, they felt they should include them in the bid as an alternate.
Replacing them?
Replacing those. Mm-hmm. And you'll see those 8 windows come in for a price of $7,594. And then the alternate 5 was a fire alarm system in there. And it is optional whether we have a fire alarm system in there, but I think for the safety of the occupants, and especially now that we're going to have 2 sides to the buildings being occupied, the committee felt that it would be necessary to have the alarm system in there. It's not a sprinkler system, that's just an alarm system, and then it's hooked up to the fire department. So when you start looking at the amount is higher than what we had told you earlier that we estimated it at, but when you look at the vestibule, the additional 8 windows, and then the fire alarm system is kind of where the extra money comes from. And then there's also some extra room, and we'll talk about that a little bit too on there. But those are the 3 alternates that we're looking at. And by the way, I should mention that I started out by saying this has been kind of a long effort, and we do really appreciate the participation of the 2 commissioners, Commissioner Gross and Ingersoll, on the committee to review the finances and what they felt was needed on behalf of the public out there. We put in the vestibule as an alternate, but they really felt that should even be just a base, part of the base bid, because it was very important from the appearance on that. Mm-hmm. So if we jump over to that fund balances that I passed out to you, there are 2 items that have been obligated that have not been paid for out of that. One is the roof, and that has been completed. It was completed last summer. I'll follow up a little bit. I think we're waiting for that 214. Oh, 214 is an okay. Yeah, the IC 134 on it, and we talked a little bit about that in the audit, that is required before payment is made. Mm-hmm. And then we do have a bid on caulking the courthouse windows. That has not been completed yet, but we've obligated those funds out of there. So if you just kind of move on down, I'm going to come back and mention the possible future items, at least one of those items on there. But as we move through this, as of on the 9th of January, we have expended $1.695 million out of the beginning fund of 2.283. And so you can see what we've spent. You can see what the obligated funds are of the $45,720, and what's remaining in that fund, and that was at a capital improvement fund that we bonded for, is $552,889.74. Now, that we need to do the parking lot out there as well. So if we do expend the $429,000, if you do approve that today, we can meet that obligation out of this capital bonding fund, which was our goal to do. And we will still have approximately $100,000 left in there, hopefully, for the paving and different things out of there now. Just to keep you up to date, though, on the funds, that was Fund 30, we'll call it. We also have a Fund 19 in which we started setting aside $100,000 a year. Well, if we include 2014 on that, we have set aside $500,000 in that capital fund. We have expended $297,000 of that. If you remember right, kind of right out of the chute, we had major problems over at the jail, and we spent about $180,000 right out of the chute. That could not go in the capital, and that's the reason why we've expended $297,000. We had some projects that could not go under the capital fund because of the way it was written in the capital improvement fund, and I think I remember our current chair was saying that he'll be watching us on that. So because I mean, it has to meet certain audit standards.
It does, doesn't it?
It does.
Right, Lori?
That's right. So we've been very careful in
So in essence, there's, between the two types of funds, there's about $310,000 that would be available after this project were to be done.
Yes, yep. That's
Even after the, but not the parking.
I'm not including the parking lot.
not after the parking. That's right. He said after. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. And we'll probably be back to you very, very soon on the elevators over in the Family Service Center have been acting up. At least the one has been acting up. And it's been down now. We'll bring in service records and show you how many times it's been down. We've had people stuck in those elevators, I want to say 3-4 times in the last 3 months. And one was stuck in there for an hour and different things. So we're going to come and ask you for bids on those. Those are going to probably run $150,000 a piece roughly in that area. So we're going to be very watchful, and we'll come to you with where the money can come from on those as well.
So going back to this, when we originally came up with that 2.283, we actually had listed projects.
Yes, we
that
did.
came up with that amount.
Yep.
What projects have, I mean, we've shifted in some sense, so what projects have kind of fallen off the wayside, or we've been, I know we got some really good
Yes.
bids, which helped do a lot more than what we had originally thought.
Yep.
But is it because of those good bids that have we still been able to keep everything on the list that we originally wanted done?
Yes, we have. We've done absolutely everything that was on the original list. Where we saved a big bunch of money was in the windows on the Family Service Center. And then we also, I think, put in, I shouldn't say I think, I know, we put in money for resurfacing of the law enforcement parking lot or rebuilding it, and we ended up just resurfacing it, so that saved us quite a bit of money as well. So what we did is we came back and we did an amendment, if we remember, to the capital improvement plan, and we added a lot of different things, and frankly, we're not getting all of those done by any means. We talked about the summertime boiler over at the maintenance building, which would have been quite expensive, and I'd have to look back at the list, but we have looked at several additional projects. But, Mr. Chair, I can assure you we've covered all of the capital improvement projects that we originally did this, and that we were fortunate to do some additional ones.
Mr. Chair? Does the elevator situation fall under safety issues? Because if they did, it seems to me that would go to the top of the priority list.
I guess the safety issue would be is if somebody gets stuck in it.
So not
Part
as
of the
that.
cables and everything, it's just that the controllers and stuff are
Okay,
at the
thank
end
you.
of their.
So what has been the problem with the elevators? Is it the electronics? Is it the,
Well,
it's not the structure itself that's failing?
50 years old.
it's kind of the same issue that I have, getting old. No, they're aging.
Yeah.
They're aging, and we probably should have been maybe putting some money aside and like what we're doing now so that they can be scheduled. This is probably going to come before you next week, because Robbie's been working with the vendors on getting spec sheets put together and different things. So we're looking at the one definitely needs to be overhauled, but we want to get bids, because if they can bring in a crane and stage once versus twice, if we can save ourselves several $1,000s, and that's what we will bring to you, is do the both, and then we'll go to Commissioner Whalen and get the extra money, because he's got a lot laying around there.
So you're going to work on getting...
We will, and then we'll tell you also when we come to you where the money will come from. So one thing that we did that I'm kind of taking more time than wanted here today, but if you go to the second page of the handout that I gave you, that's the layout of the design. And if you kind of lay it sideways with that garage up on the top, that's facing east. Garage is facing east, and you'll see that vestibule down here at 131 square feet. So we get all on the same page. That's going to be the main entrance. And if you move to the 1,162 square feet, that is where driver's license testing is going to be located. And then behind it, you'll see temporary testing. That was an additional room that was put on there because during the transition of this area will be done first. If you approve it, this area will be done first. Then we are going to move the motor vehicle staff into the area that's being remodeled for the testing part, and the testing part will be in here temporarily while we do this, so we can shift people around. And then after that's all completed, this will be an open training room or something that the county will have access. So it did add square footage, but we felt it was necessary in order to make this project work, and also it was quite inexpensive to add that additional. Because if you notice, we went all the way over to the north wall, and we did that for fire rating and for simplicity of doing the work. This was a suggestion by the architects. I think it's a very good idea. And also, if you will look at the bottom of the front page that I handed out to you, driver's license was renting from us, and our income from driver's license was $4,102. Originally, they were looking at 760 square feet, and you can see that was going to yield us, and they were agreed upon that, the $9,690. But through this planning project, they had requested some additional space, and we're right now communicating with them, and it's going well. It looks like they will be paying us $14,815, which is an increase of $10,000 a year in rent. And that's going to go a long way, and especially if you think of this being a 10 or 20-year project, that's going to yield us an extra $100,000. We'll have some extra expenses with heating and things out of it, but this is going to help pay for this project as well. So we feel pretty good about that. The other thing I want to mention to you before you evaluate whether you're going to approve this, we're going to ask you for authorization to sign a contract with the contractor, the KBW. The contract has not gone to Jenny yet. This only happened last week. So in the motion, if you can approve it on her approval, we'd appreciate that as well. And then there's one additional thing in there that if you're asking, or we're asking for, and that is probably, and I understand if you don't want to go that way, but with remodeling, there's always some small changes that can occur that could hold up a project, and possibly if you wanted to authorize me or Lori or somebody to authorize up to $2,000 for change orders, and then we'd bring them in right the next week so we didn't hold things up, that would be helpful. So.
Well, I think it would be probably good to maybe have that start by going to Lori and then maybe then to Brian, and if you two concur, I think you should just keep it moving, right?
Yep, that'd be good. Be good.
Done.
The spaces left for a garage, that still handle a bus sitting there?
You know, it would, but, Mr. Chair, if I may, it would, but we really don't want fumes and things, and we have negotiated with Lakes and Prairies. We are already relocated those buses up to the north, which we did have space in. So this will be quite a large garage that he can use, that Robbie can use for storage and equipment and different things where we aren't running buses in and out that are next door. So we feel that's going to be a real plus.
Now, will the vestibule be done first so that you can have access through there into the new area?
No, the vestibule will be done last.
Oh, okay.
So we will have to work some
But you
flow
got to cut a
out.
door. You got to cut a door in the wall there.
Yeah, we do.
To get
Yeah,
into the-
we do.
okay.
But the footings for the vestibule and things on the outside will be done in the spring when the frost is out and different things. So it got a little later than, we'd like to have seen that vestibule put in this fall, but it's just the way things are working out, I guess.
Well, let's get this thing rolling here.
Okay, I like that.
I would sure like this, here's a motion made to,
I'll make a motion that we accept the little bit from KBW Associates, and also requesting that if there's change orders up to 2,000, include that in the motion.
okay, we have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same, motion carried. And thank you to Wayne and Frank for your work on behalf of the board and getting this thing designed and ready to roll. That looks good. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie.
Mr. Chair, board
Yep,
members.
you bet.
Why don't we go to this one and come back to this, because all these people are in there.
It's up to you. It's your call.
Yeah, it's just, okay, our next item is the approval of the sponsorship for the Barnes Trail County grant. And Dave, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, the city of Barnesville has showed interest in applying again for a TAP grant. It's a Transportation Alternatives. I think that's the new MAP 21 TE, or Transportation Enhancement type of funding mechanism for trails and things around schools and other parts of the community. There is 2 resolutions, I guess, that they'd like us to pass and approve if we so wish to sponsor their project again. The city has also, they have passed resolution amongst the city council. It seems like a pretty good project. They cannot apply for this without county support, and we have done it for Barnesville, as well as the city of Hawley and the cities of Dilworth as well.
Mr. Chair, I move the sponsoring agency resolution is presented to us by Dave. That's the first one.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same, motion carried.
There is one more. There's the one that it's a resolution agreeing to maintain. It's kind of it's a little bit of it's MnDOT's assurance that someone's going to maintain this. What we've done in the past is if they do get approved for the grant, we've got a special resolution, kind of an agreement that we signed with these communities stating that we're kind of held harmless, I guess.
They're responsible for the financing of the activity.
Yep, exactly. Yep, it's on their property, on the right-of-ways. MnDOT wants this from the sponsoring agency, but yet we'll have a second document if they get chosen to build it.
I would move resolution that agreeing to maintain the facility.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same, motion carried. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll see you a little later today. Okay. All right, we'll go to our I'm sorry, we're running just a little bit behind here, folks, but we're going to go to our 9-10 item right now, and that's request for placement of solid waste manager candidate on the salary grid. Mr. Berg's coming back again. And I wonder if maybe Darren wants to join us up here in case there's questions regarding Good stuff. Darren, do you want to join us up here, please? Good morning. Good morning. Just want to make sure you got on camera today.
Yeah, I'm the filler again, remember?
Maybe while Brian's getting this ready, I can speak for John and I as board members who were on the search committee for this. And as we went through this whole thing, I think we've come up with a very strong, viable candidate to come in and take over our solid waste management. And I think we're pretty excited for what he brings and offers at the table here. So, Brian, take it away.
Well, Mr. Chair, we can move through this, I think, fairly fast. The memo I passed out just kind of identified that we had taken some time in our progression here. You remember coming on October 8th, I came to the board, and that's where this organizational flow chart that I handed out as well, you approved that on October 8th, and that was we were removing the solid waste from being a function within the environmental services to a standalone entity under central administration. So the solid waste manager will be a standalone function within that department. So, and we went through and we reevaluated the position. Looking at that, we wanted to hire an engineer. We're not hiring an engineer, but we're hiring a person that has extensive background in environmental landfills and recycling and solid waste and burners. And he's worked for the DNR, he's worked for the MPCA, he's had private consulting jobs in composting and just a whole host of other things. And I think Mr. Chair had identified the positive review that we had with them, both individually, and we had conducted our first interview on the phone with 4 different ones. There were some very positive candidates in that group, and we feel that Mr. Rosenberger rose to the top of that. So, but with that experience comes some additional dollars, and that's why I'm here before you today asking for board action for Mr. Rosenberg to begin his employment at step 8 of pay grade 23, and also to start with a bank of 40 hours sick leave and 40 hours vacation.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Who was on that committee, you and who else?
Yeah, it was myself and John and Dave Overbo was on the committee.
But you two agree with the speaker?
Oh, we certainly do. It's I mean, like Brian said, there were other qualified candidates, but in this particular case, in this, the whole scoring mechanisms, he was ranked on top, I think, in every interviewer.
Yep.
So clearly, I think we got the right thing, and I think, to get somebody with that experience, it requires us to put them in and my concern, this doesn't get into there's no compression issues here, is there?
No.
That's kind of what my question was going to be for you, Darren.
No.
Okay.
I would like to move that we offer the position to Kirk Rosenberger at step 8, grade 23, with a starting vacation bank of 40 hours and sick leave bank of 40 hours.
I'll second.
The second to the motion. Any further discussion?
I got a question on start and vacation bank. Is that a normal thing we do, or did we do before? I mean, I've never seen that we hired a new employee and gave him some vacation time.
Sometimes when you get into that level of administration, as a matter of fact, when we brought Brian Berg on, that was part of the agreement to Sometimes these guys are just hard to get in. You know, they're hard negotiators.
He didn't take vacation first week, did he?
He waited. 2 weeks. Well, yeah, I think, you know, just like in the private world, it's the same thing. You have to negotiate some of these things in order to...
Mr. Terry also did it with Nancy Gunderson, our
Yes.
assessor. She was coming to us with 30 years of experience as well, and those people don't have a lot of opportunity to build the vacation, and when you get that stage of the game, they need some breaks.
Great, welcome. Okay, any other questions? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
Thank you,
Motion
Mr.
carried, and so you
Appreciate
two will follow up with them and
Yep.
get them on. Okay, sounds good.
Sounds real good. Glad to get them on board.
Okay, our next item is the Farm in the Dell presentation. And we have Glenn Nerlacher, Karen Swenson, Ricky Tarragon, Farm in the Dell of the Red River Valley, Rhonda Porter, Lori Young, well, good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
All right,
Nice to
I'll
see you
just
here.
get us started.
Rhonda,
if
you're gonna
that's
start us
okay.
off?
I'm
Great,
gonna start
perfect.
us off, and then I'm
All
going
right.
to turn it over.
Okay, all right.
Okay, we have a presentation for you today from Farm in the Dell of the Red River Valley. Farm in the Dell has recently been established as a 501c3 nonprofit organization serving individuals in our community with disabilities. So they have been doing some work over the last few years and have some plans to want to provide some residential and vocational services for folks with disabilities. So they're going to talk with you a little bit about what they've been up to.
So before we get started too, when it is your turn to speak, if you can try to get as close to the microphones as you can, so then that it picks up better for the public who's listening.
Right.
Yeah, and you can maybe just introduce yourself.
Sure. All right, well, I'd like to thank Lori Young and Rhonda Porter for arranging this opportunity for us, and of course for you guys for being able to sit and listen to us. We are scheduled about approximately 30 minutes, so the format that we kind of chose to do was a presentation of kind of the past, the present, and the future, and then allow for about 10 minutes of answers and question and answers. So with that, I'm Glenn Erlacher, part of the board of Farm in the Dell, Karen Swanson, and then in the back we have other board members, Karen Erlacher, Lee Swanson, and Gary Strike. There are other board members that aren't able to be here today, but we're here to share the vision that has been set forth for us, and hopefully give you guys an insight as to where we're headed and what we hope to accomplish.
Yes.
So,
And seeing as how you have other board members back there, if they have things to say too, we do have another working mic there. If you want to come up and talk on what they're talking about, feel free to come on up, and we'd love to hear from you.
I'd like to begin by just passing these out. I know you have gotten some information on this, but there is kind of a complete pamphlet here on some of the bullet points and things that we are working on. So with that, I'll start with kind of the history of Farm in the Dell, and then pass it over to Karen for the kind of the present and things that are happening, and then I'll finish up with a little bit on the future of what we're hoping to accomplish. So Farm in the Dell was started by Lowell Bartles in Montana about 25 years ago. He started it because he saw a huge need for people with disabilities that were transitioning from high school into adulthood, if for lack of a better word, with less than ideal opportunities for purposeful work and a safe work, home environment. So when he started with one farm. It grew to 5 more in Montana, 1 in Canada, and 1 in Russia. Presently, there's other ones that are being planned for in Pennsylvania and Oregon, and hopefully in Moorhead area also. So
When he started, he had a lot of opposition from the government, but soon after he started them, why the government was asking him to build as many as he could because they saw the success, they saw how they operated, they saw what they were accomplishing. Of course, it's a big undertaking and it takes a lot of revenue, so they don't pop up overnight, but he is continuing to pursue those. We formed as a board in 2012 as concerned parents for our own individuals that are transitioning from high school into adulthood. We know from past experience that one of the biggest challenges for people with disabilities is purposeful work. So that's one of our main focuses, and like Lori or Rhonda had mentioned, we are incorporated. We've been raising funds. We've raised approximately $40,000 over the past year or so. We have also had the opportunity to share our vision with various different groups, church groups, civic groups. I've yet to see anybody stand up and say that this isn't a good idea. We've had support from civic groups, and I guess one of the things that we really want to focus on, and this will lead into a little bit of what Karen's going to share, but we had the opportunity this past summer to have a garden, and this isn't only a benefit for the people with disabilities, it's a benefit for the community. And we, as a board, have taken on a vision of purposeful work and just really want to provide that safe life or home for them, a home that'll be their home for life. Because once Farm in Adele is established, that's the way it's set up, is that that's a place for them to live for life. So it can become their own home, provides a place for safe relationships, social interaction, and provides a place for the community to come out and interact with those individuals. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Karen and share a little bit about what some of the things we've been up to, and then I'll go back into the future.
Okay. Hi, I'm Karen Swanson, and I guess just kind of piggybacking a little bit off of what Glenn talked about, having this home for life. We did take a road trip about a year ago, went out to Montana and visited a couple of the farms there. So it helped us to kind of catch the vision of what the farms can be. Each farm is just a little bit different in what they do, and we know that our farm here in the Red River Valley will also be unique. But what we really saw in those homes was the pride that these people had. We came around and the staff didn't give us the tour. It was really the individuals living there, very excited to show us their home, and they referred to it as their home. It wasn't the group home, it was their home. And then they also took us out and they showed us the animals they were raising, the chickens, how they got eggs. They used, a lot of that produce to use in their own kitchens for cooking and providing for themselves as well as selling. So we really got to see that unique family kind of experience that they had in Montana. So kind of as far as what the Farm in the Dell of the Red River Valley is doing right now, we had this unique opportunity where the Catalyst Medical Center offered us a 100 by 100 lot this summer to grow a community garden for the Farm in the Dell. We enthusiastically said yes, we would take that project on, and Memorial Day weekend we started working to make our garden. What we really didn't expect to see happen was the individuals with special needs that came out to work in the garden, how well that they worked. We knew that we were going to bring them with, we were going to try to incorporate them working. We didn't realize that they would really own it and that they would really take part in it. We saw kids shoveling compost for 2-3 hours without complaining. And that just doesn't happen at my house. I don't know if it does anybody else. But it wasn't expected that they were really going to enjoy it as much as they did. So we hauled compost, we tilled, do all the normal garden things, the planting. We planned bi-weekly kind of organized days where we had individuals from the community come out. Wednesdays was kind of a work day, and then we also had Sunday, which was family day, and various groups would come. There were also groups that met kind of during the week, unofficially, kind of here and there. Like we had an iPad group that would come out once in a while and just, enjoy being in the garden. Some unexpected kind of things there too as things began to grow, and we had different individuals with special needs come out. We had one young man with Down syndrome that held on to a little stuffed dog all the time. We saw him set that down and pick carrots, and his mom was just amazed. He was in his 30s and he never let go of that, and he really participated in the gardening. There have been studies, I guess, that Lowell has brought up that individuals with special needs and with mental illness, that they really improve when they're allowed to, work the land and work with animals, that this is really a good environment for them, and we got to see a little bit of that firsthand. As our garden grew throughout the summer, and it did, we were amazed that it was really quite successful. We had 150 tomato plants that were donated. Otherwise, we planted seeds for potatoes, carrots, just a real wide variety of things. And it grew, and it did really well. We formed some relationships with One Oak Place, that is a senior living center that's right next to our garden. And they invited us to come once a week and sell produce during their lunch hour. And this was a great place for our kids to have a first experience selling. They learned how to weigh the vegetables, learn the prices, take money, and be a part of that selling. Then we also were able to do kind of the same thing out at Trollwood Village, another senior living environment where they have an organized lunch. We sold our vegetables during their lunch hour, and the same kind of arrangement was made there. We also sold at the Knights of Columbus lot next to Hornbacher's, had a vegetable stand there and sold to the public. For whatever reason, that one wasn't quite as successful. We weren't as busy as we thought that we'd be there, but learn as we go kind of things, constantly finding new areas. We did sell at a couple sporting events and a few churches, just kind of different events that we were invited to. For the future, we are looking at maybe doing some CSAs on a limited basis next summer, and continuing to sell at the retirement homes. We were really appreciated, I guess, even at those retirement centers. We felt like they really appreciated us coming in there. There was a lot of retired farmers that were used to having, some fresh produce, and quite often when we came, they were lined up waiting for us to come. So we felt not only were we giving our kids experience, but we were giving back to the community as well. I'm just going to peek at my notes, see if I forgot anything. I think that's most of what I wanted to share about the garden, but looking forward to just watching that grow and continue to give more opportunities like that, and especially once we have our own place. Spreading out and having some animals and just a lot of other opportunities for young people with special needs to get involved in.
And just to piggyback on that a little bit, I guess we know that these farms are successful based on the fact of what we've seen in Montana. We know that everything doesn't fit, one size fits all, but we know from past history that they are successful. But I think what we also learned through the garden is that the garden did exactly what we anticipate the farm will do to a bigger extent. When we saw those kids participate at the level they did, it just solidified our thought process as these kids will participate, they want to participate, they want to give back, and they can give back. So that's our motivation, is to provide something that they can participate at the highest level. We're going to have people with varying disabilities, but they can all participate at some level. And I guess unless you actually experience it, you don't necessarily grab it, but it was amazing to me to see these people plant the seeds, and my own son eventually wanted to eat beets. Well, there's not a lot of beet eaters in the world, but he loves beets, and I know it was from the fact that he saw that planted, it grew, he harvested, and he saw what he was able to eat. So, well, with that, I'll just focus in a little bit on the future. As we look at the future of Farm in the Dell and what we're really pushing forward, our vision is transforming disabilities into abilities by providing purposeful work, caring relationships, and a loving and Christ-centered home. And I kind of touched on that earlier, but what we are driving for is a farm of 20 acres within 10 miles of town. And why this is important to be within 10 miles of town is for the other side of what we feel is very important, is that not only does this farm provide an opportunity for the people that live there, it provides an opportunity for 20-plus individuals to come out there and work at the farm. That's already happening out in Montana at one of the farms, and we know that it can happen here too. So it doesn't just single out 10 people that will have this opportunity, it expands it. So, but when you figure in transportation and the need to be connected, you need to have a limited amount of distance between that. It also brings the community out there. One of the things that, again, I'll refer to Montana is they have what they call harvest days. They consistently get 3,000 to 5,000 people that come out to that farm for harvest days. They do a variety of things. Again, it gets the kids to be involved in the community involved in the kids' life. And I shouldn't say kids, these people are adult individuals. So that's what we're looking for. And we have been, eagerly looking for land, working with different individuals to see what opportunities are out there. So what do we look at when we think of a farm? I mean, it's not going to be a 300-acre farm where you're growing beets or soybeans or anything like that. We look at a farm that's going to have a couple gardens, one possibly for the food supply for the garden or for the farm itself, one for selling product. Greenhouses, we have people that already have greenhouses that are ready to give them to us for flowers, for growing plants, getting them ready for the gardens. Small animals, whether that be chickens, that type of thing. One of the farms in Montana has miniature cattle. So we also have the opportunity, and I know one individual on our board is very excited about this. We have a worm farm, and we are destined to help supply feed the fish in the 10,000 lakes in Minnesota. So, it's kind of a laughing point, but again, we've investigated this, and there is a very good potential that this could be reality, along with developing another relationship with a sporting goods store that can come alongside us and help it make it happen. So a workshop, apple orchards, raspberry, strawberry patches provide for canning opportunities in the wintertime. There's craft opportunities to do small craft projects that can be sold at craft shows, and then on the social, we also want to make sure that we give these people a well-rounded life. So we're not only looking for a safe living environment, a purposeful life, but we also want to make sure that we allow for social interaction and the spiritual aspect of their life too. So we have barn dances out there, outdoor movie type things, Bible studies. We've been involved in some Sunday school opportunities, and just like on the purposeful work side of things, these people have a spiritual side that they need to be fulfilled in, and they do. They react to it. So again, we can't emphasize enough that these people want to give back. we really feel like it's not only a benefit to our kids, to the community, but to the county and government as well, as these people can provide and not be as much of a burden on the taxpayers of Minnesota. So I guess with that, unless other individuals have things they want to share, we just open it up to some questions and answers.
Okay. Questions? Jeff?
I first heard your presentation in Barnesville at
Yep,
the Lions
yep.
meeting, and not only was I impressed, but I think the whole group there was very impressed with what you're proposing. At the time, I gave you a suggestion on a site. Has that ever been followed through on? And
We did investigate that site, and I appreciate the lead on that. Contacted the person, and they are not willing to sell.
Yeah, okay.
And they did say that if they ever did sell, they'd contact us, but they feel like they have a very valuable piece of property, and I think they're just going to be sitting on it. So
It would be ideal for this.
yeah, it would. It certainly would.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Karen, you were talking and you mentioned CSAs. What does that stand for, please?
Community supported agriculture.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The Bluebird
Okay,
Gardens.
I do have a few other questions, and I'm sure this will come up in any of your presentation. Where does the money come from to purchase this land, to build the buildings, to pay the staff? We were talking quite a bit of money. Where does those initial funds come from?
The initial funds comes as we raise. We've worked with grant writing, getting some grants. We're fundraising. We're going to have another spring fundraiser in April. So we're destined to stand the cost for the initial cost of buildings. We want to be able to, like I said before, once we purchase, it's Farm and Adele for life. So it stays that way. The operating funds of the home would be worked through the government, whether that's, and we have worked with the government as far as how that would work.
The farm and the dells that are in existence right now are sustaining, and there's, from what you say, there is no real concern regarding funding for them and the grants and that kind of thing. Are they doing all
Yeah,
right?
they're sustaining, yes.
Okay, good.
There is one that's privately run, so there's no government funding involved in that one, but the other ones are supported by the government.
A couple other questions, Mr. Chair. Your current proposal, and I know that's just informational as of today.
Yes.
Your current proposal is for 5 women, 5 men. Would that increase as time goes on, or is that the limit at this?
We certainly hope that it would increase
Okay.
over time.
All right.
But starting,
All right.
we'd like to
5
start
and
one
5.
home. We're hoping the idea really takes off
All right.
and that there will be more as the future comes, but.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions?
I'd like to hear from Rhonda and Lori as to how they feel this could fit into our needs in the county.
Well, I think, from the county perspective, it's always a good thing to have a diversity in the service models and the variety of supports and services and choices. So, this is a unique model for Minnesota, and I certainly support their enthusiasm and their passion in this, and intentions to provide that for their adult children and for other people with disabilities. There are some challenges in this. My understanding is those folks would need home and community-based waiver to pay for the staff, to support the services, and they should be Minnesota residents, of course, to access that funding. And if they're eligible, the state of Minnesota is going through some changes in services for folks with disabilities. They're looking a little bit at tweaking some eligibility pieces, assessment pieces, and also I think the biggest challenge right now is Minnesota has a moratorium on corporate foster care beds, which these would be considered a corporate foster care site. So, the state by June 2014 is supposed to decrease the corporate foster care beds throughout the state of Minnesota by 128 beds. So to move forward, looking at 10 beds in this development, I think remains a challenge. The county doesn't have any control or say on development of those beds. When we first had our conversations, the county was in control of what we called our banked foster care beds, where a provider closed a site, whatever, we kept those beds and we could, use them within our own community or county. The state changed that last summer, I believe it was, where all those beds went to the state control. So we can't say to any provider, yeah, the county would be happy to reserve these beds for your development. We don't have that ability at this point. So it's in the hands of the state. I don't know what kind of conversations you've had with the legislators, maybe perhaps, or...
Well, just to touch a little bit on that, we understand that there's moratorium on the beds, but what we're doing is we're preparing for what we believe as Minnesota cannot ignore the needs of the disability forever and ever. So, and I'm not saying they have, I'm saying they can't, there has to be a solution to, these people will end up out on the streets eventually if that isn't taken care of. So we just want to be prepared for the time that Minnesota determines how that's going to be handled. So we aren't saying we're just going to run ahead of the moratorium and say we can do this without the proper procedures. We just want to be fully prepared for when they do say we can go, we're going to go.
Well, Glenn and Karen, your passion for this shows as to how well you think it could serve this group of people, and I would encourage you, as what Laurie just said, it appears to be more of a state issue about the ability to, from the standpoint of the housing and the people who would live there, and the revenue to deal with that. It's a state issue. I would encourage you to talk with Ben Lean and Kent Eakin and Paul Marquardt and show them what you've shown us. It's like what Commissioner Everett said with the meeting that you had in Barnesville. Not only do elected people think this is good, but so do the people in general when they hear about it. And so I think you have a lot of pluses going for you moving forward, and you've certainly got a good story to tell. And I would certainly encourage you to go that direction. If we don't like the rules in place, you go and you try to get them changed, and that's where you need to be. John.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on that. Lori, is the state's action towards that because they don't like this kind of setting, or is it simply to save money, or what's the reason?
Well, it's a long history, I think, going back on that. Minnesota pretty embraced the corporate foster care model, and in Clay County as well, we kind of went that route, and so I think they're just trying to contain that model and have the counties and providers look at other models of service delivery, maybe smaller models, maybe family foster care, more independence, technology in their own homes, some remote monitoring, and all those different varieties of ways to serve people. Not all are appropriate for everybody, of course, and so that's why we need that full spectrum and wide range. But it's been determined to be an expensive model in most situations, shift staff, so you get, the overhead cost, of course, are...
Compared to family foster.
Correct,
yeah. If there's, there's certainly... We should look at what it is we can do to encourage legislative change or to stop that movement that they're doing right now. If we think this is something that we should be.
Well, and I haven't researched this, of course, but I just sometimes you hear about legislators bringing forth a pilot project or an exemption or some kind of, because there is, then they can learn from that model for further development. So I don't know if that's something the legislators would be open for, but I think that's the route that I would encourage.
Well, I think the new commissioners, or she's not new anymore, the commissioner is pretty open to different kinds of innovative ideas. So I'm on the board with Lutheran Social Service of Minnesota, and their My Life, My Choice thing has really been accepted by the state, I think, and others. And I think this is something that could fit into that. So I think we should investigate and figure out if it's something we should advocate for.
We certainly want to do this as cost effectively as we possibly can. I know that the continued staffing is expensive. Some of the alternatives out there kind of scare us, I guess, as parents. Putting an individual with special needs in an apartment, isolated, with an alarm on the door, next to who knows who for a neighbor. We want them to live in a family setting where they have, individuals, they have social interactions. And we certainly would want to do that as cost effectively as possible, with our staffing. And it'll depend on who exactly ends up living there, how much staff we will need. But we will certainly try to do that as cost effectively and, growing some of our own food and trying to offset costs there as well. But we understand the need to save money.
Frank, did you have a...
Well, I guess it's probably somewhat answered already, but Glenn said something about, the state of Minnesota's got to realize that these people need to be taken care of, but where are these people now? I mean, aren't they being taken care of now?
Well, they are being taken care of, but I think we're seeing an increase in the number of people with disabilities and the number of them that are transitioning from high school into adulthood. So, and that's exactly what Montana has seen and saw too. So, I think the numbers are just increasing. As diagnoses continue to increase with autism, I mean, if you go back into statistics, when our son was diagnosed as probably 1 in 150, and now you're down to 1 in 70 or so on the boys' side of things. So you just see an increase in that, and you can't stay stagnant with the amount of services that are provided with increase in diagnosis.
Yeah, and there is this moratorium on beds, but the amount of people is not staying stagnant. Those kids in that age group are going to be graduating from high school. They're being taken care of because they're at home with their parents. But at some point, wanting to live on their own, having their own home and their own workplace is going to be a need that we're going to see in the future. And the numbers are growing as the elderly in the disability community are living longer. Those beds aren't opening up. So it'll have to move in some direction.
Well, very good. Thank you for coming today and presenting. You have a good story to tell. I would encourage you to keep working on it.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, our next item is the medication-assisted opioid treatment proposal for Premier Care. And Rhonda's going to come back up with this, and Pat Boyer's going to join us. And we have a Daniel Brown and a Charles Fries. Am I saying that correctly?
Charles and Daniel, yep.
Fries, yeah. Good morning. Yeah.
Good morning, okay. Okay, good morning.
All right. Oh, I'm going to go back and grab my glasses. I got away with that on the other one, but I don't think I can at this one. You made it.
Yes, oh yes, a little warmer than last time.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, I think you did get quite a bit of information in the board packet about the topic today. We do have Daniel Brown and Charlie Fees here from Premier Care, principals of Premier Care. So what we wanted to do is just give them an opportunity to share with you what they would like to propose for Clay County. The first part of the board agenda, this is a little different than the previous presentation because in this development, there is a statute that does involve the county and the county board in providing either a letter of support or a letter of non-support in the application process for Premier Care. So there is a role that the board plays in this development, and in the board packet, I did provide that statute and rule information for you. So in all of the information that you got in the board packet, I did send to Premier Care as well, so they're aware of the content of the conversation for today. But I thought maybe we could start by turning it over to you folks and can talk a little bit about what you're proposing to provide. Okay.
Yeah, and if you would talk as close into those microphones as you can, please. Okay. And you can move it around. There you go.
Actually, what we're proposing is a development and establishment of a medication-assisted treatment program for opiate-dependent individuals to be located in Clay County. And I think, as Rhonda was saying, part of the process is a letter of support or a letter of non-support, for what the proposal is. We completed, Premier Care, we own existing treatment programs and so forth, and we established the business a number of years ago with the idea that we wanted to serve underserved areas through the provision of medication-assisted treatment programs, which would be methadone and Suboxone. In doing so, we identify areas that are underserved and so forth. Through some other endeavors, I'm familiar with Minnesota through I own a consulting firm as well and so forth, so that we've done work in Minnesota and so forth. But basically what's happened is that I think with respect to the recommendation here, it's that Clay County doesn't have the prevalency numbers to support a methadone medication-assisted treatment program in itself. And certainly understand that and agree with that with respect to the needs assessment that Brown, the consulting firm, completed and so forth. But what we're proposing is the development of a regional medication-assisted treatment program to be located in Clay County to service Clay County residents as well as the surrounding 5 counties. And the closest, in doing the needs assessment, we're projecting on a regional basis, there's the need to service about 250-some clients. Okay, and we think that's conservative estimates, kind of use traditional prevalency estimate formulas to get to that number. Out of that number, if you were looking at Clay County alone, you probably would be looking at the prevalency estimates would suggest maybe only 39 clients. So it is a regional. It's very similar to other healthcare facilities where they would establish to service a region as opposed to just one county. I guess in saying that and so forth, the needs assessment identified that the closest program is about 170 miles away. Opiate dependencies continues to increase each year. Nationally, it's certainly a growing concern for all communities and so forth. Minnesota, you have 18 treatment facilities across the state. Most of them are located in larger metropolitan areas and so forth. Some have multiple sites to service a larger area and so forth. But what happens is the rural areas or the smaller areas, mid-sized areas, become underserved. And doing the needs assessment, we identified that the service delivery system, your existing service delivery system for the regional, on a regional basis, it's really underserved. It does not have that level of treatment available to its clients. Some clients are, again, driving probably 3 hours to access treatment and so forth. So that's really what we're proposing. we certainly agree and respect that. We had we had a very positive meeting with Rhonda and her service delivery system, got input and so forth and things like that. And so we understand the fact that, Clay County, does Clay County just singular in itself need a treatment program? It would be an extremely small program, but the region needs one, and we think this is, with the population base, access to professional staff and so forth, access roads to the regional area and so forth. We think, Moorhead is the location, the logical location for a facility to treat the region, to make services available. So that's really what we're proposing. And what we wanted to do, we can review the full needs assessment. The needs assessment does demonstrate need for services on a regional basis. It does not demonstrate need just for Clay County. Okay, although your Minnesota, I think, 2011 data for Minnesota substance abuse data does indicate that I think 39 clients out of Clay County received treatment, were admitted for opiate dependency or something. So, and that's a small program would be about 80 clients. Would be considered small. A mid-size would probably be about 200 to 300 clients. Large program could be potentially 1,000 clients.
Can I ask you, where are these people in Clay County now that have this problem? Where are these people now in Clay County? Where are they? Are they in our jails? Where are they?
I would say it could be a vast spread of placement. I think some folks are probably in that revolving door of the criminal justice system. Some folks are probably accessing treatment. Medication-assisted treatment is come a long way as far as recognition of a very viable and effective treatment model, whereas 10 to 15 years ago, it wasn't really looked upon as maybe the most favorable alternative. As more research has been done, as more treatment itself is integrated with medication administration, you're seeing higher success rates than you've ever seen before in treating opioid addiction. So the folks that are in your community or in your county now are probably seeking treatment possibly by maybe another medication-assisted treatment program 170 miles away. They could be going to traditional outpatient. They could just maybe not be seeking treatment. I think there's something to be said for we're looking at data that's very specific data for a very specific population that we don't offer services for directly. We do it's sort of, you go to your physician for a common cold, but would you go to your physician for maybe something more serious, neurological? No, you need to go to a neurologist. So what I'm getting at is I think we're looking at data that is maybe a little bit skewed in the fact that we're not providing that targeted of a treatment model right now. However, it's really tough to tell where those folks are. The data we're pulling is from a website that I believe, I don't know if it's still funded. The data set is as far back as 2004 and as recent as 2010 or 2011, but there's nothing since then. And it was a state level, I believe it might have been a county grant that the state handed down to each county to collect the information of, hey, how many folks are presenting for funding, for treatment, and what is the drug of choice or what is the presenting problem. So that was tracked, a really nice, informative website, but it doesn't really tell you where those folks necessarily went.
Okay.
Is there any indication that you have or study that indicates that this manner of treatment is more effective than other manners of treatment, or is it? I guess why would we support this kind of thing?
Yeah.
If there's other ways to do it.
Right. I know. I come, and I've been in the field probably about 35 years and so forth, and I come from an abstinence-based model. So, so that abstinence-based, very 12-step oriented and so forth. And I actually, in my early years and so forth, was pretty much anti-methadone, anti-medication-assisted treatment and so forth. I didn't see the effectiveness of it. And then as I became introduced to it, so, you see that some individuals respond to different treatment modalities better than other individuals, and so our clinics, and so we offer both detoxification as well as maintenance and so, depending on the needs of the individual. But nationally, I mean, there's probably studies on each side that talk about the effectiveness of treatment. I know we see people that respond very well to medication-assisted treatment programming. A lot of them, they're able to continue their employment, their address quality of life issues. We see other individuals who, they wouldn't respond to that. They need to be in an abstinence base. They're motivated. They're highly motivated. They've got good support systems in place. They're ready to abstain totally. So.
And is this medication something that is only temporary, or is it a lifetime? Do you take the medication forever? Is it so are we simply replacing one drug for another, or what? How is this?
Well, I think philosophically, I think that's what a lot of individuals or a lot of people, and I think that's the stigma attached to treatment and things. As I said, there's a detox component, where people can be detoxed, and the piece there is the individual needs to be motivated, needs to be part of that, and to want to detox. There's a maintenance level, which I think I heard kind of the average on maintenance is about 2.5 years on maintenance. We have individuals, and we've seen individuals across the country, though, that have been on methadone a lot longer, than 2.5 years. It has become a maintenance drug, but I think there's a misconception of it that it gives these individuals a high. It gives it, it replaces it. What it does is it allows them to function, and without the street drugs and so forth, or the euphoric high, and that's the other piece, and I think that's pretty important. And actually, one of the things, Minnesota's the mecca for addiction treatment. I mean, you had the Minnesota model years ago, and it was really one of the first states, obviously, in the country that really set a precedence for addiction treatment. You had the 30-day inpatient program and abstinence-based and very traditional programs, whether you go to Hazleton, whether you go to, there used to be the Johnson Institute, Twin Town, just good quality programs and so forth. Many of them today recognize medication-assisted treatment and are providing it, which, it's kind of like similar to my history where I was very opposed, and I'm sure they were very opposed to it at one point in their development and so forth. But I think, again, individuals respond to different levels of care, different types of care, and the issue here, we believe the issue is that your service delivery system for the region doesn't make this level of care available. And,
okay, Commissioner Whalen.
How long has Premier Care been in business? How long have you been?
2004.
Since 2004. How many centers are you operating right now?
We have 5.
And a traditional outpatient program as well.
And a traditional outpatient program as well, so total 6.
6.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had any contact with the other counties that you've talked about here with?
No, the issue, one of the biggest problems we face when establishing a program is professional staff. It is really difficult to go into a community of maybe 10,000 people and find enough professional staff to maintain the appropriate folks and people that are really honestly credentialed and educated to provide good services. So it's one of the major things we look at in establishing a new program is not only the need and not only the geographic location with access roads, but a really important piece of that is a community where you can find professional staff.
What kind of issues have you had in the clinics you're operating now, or the centers you're operating now, in terms of problems or issues that law enforcement has to deal with, that type of thing?
In reading some of the responses and letters that were included in the report, some of it, we find pretty interesting because, to be quite honest with you, it's maybe not completely accurate. I think that our clinic in Indiana, which is the community that seems to be that was targeted because it's sort of a similar-sized community, I think you could probably count. We opened it in June of 2007. probably haven't had the police out there 5 times since we've opened. And I'm sure that's a report we could pull and give you, and the reasons why. A lot of times it'll be, a client presents for treatment, they're having some issues, they've said some things that make you concerned for their well-being, and you call the police. I wouldn't deny that we probably have had a fight before we've had to call the police. But honestly, I would think, and I could be wrong, maybe it's 7 times in the last 6-7 years. Nothing major, nothing catastrophic, nothing, and the other piece of it was I noticed the mention of increased crime. So I looked at the crime data for that community, and it's actually decreased since 2007. Burglaries in 2007 were over 1,000. Last year, the data reported was maybe 2011, 2012, it was at 800. And sort of the entire crime rate decreased. So I think a lot of times, because of the population we deal with, because we're dealing with folks who are addicted and in recovery, they like to point blame that these folks are maybe not the desirable folks they want driving or traveling through their community. But I think the matter of the fact is they're there. I really would be hard-pressed to believe that we've caused any burden on the police department, and I know they're going to say the opposite because they want to have somebody to blame. We have other clinics in other communities where we have excellent relationships with the police. If you contacted the Westchester Police Department, they would say excellent things about us. And I think there are good operators and bad operators in any business. And I think traditionally there have been, especially in the state of Minnesota, as demonstrated by some of the news articles, bad operators. We definitely pride ourselves on accountability, running a good clinic, being a good neighbor. We typically have community advisory boards. I know there was some mention about judges and law enforcement in Marion, Indiana not having communication with us. We've had 2 subsequent meetings in the last year or so with the judges. Anytime anybody raises a concern, we're an open book, open door. We're not, saying stay away. This is,
We do that, and I think typically any community, probably the most resistance comes from law enforcement, the nature of their positions and so forth. They're dealing with, crime involvement, substance abuse involvement that leads to crimes and things like that. So there's a big, I think, learning curve, educational piece and different things like that. But yeah, I think going back historically to the stigma attached to medication-assisted treatment, yet it's become recognized. But I do think there's a big learning curve for everybody. We do have a community advisory committee attached to each of our clinics. One of our things is that we want to be a part of the service delivery system, not apart from it. And I think a lot of clinics stay apart from the other service providers and kind of out doing their own thing. And I think that's totally the wrong approach, and I think that's been a downside to medication-assisted treatment in the past and things. But I think with respect to the Community Advisory Committee and law enforcement, we've attempted to bring, we run an open house for individuals at each of the clinics to come in, law enforcement and so forth. We've invited local law enforcement beyond the advisory committee as well as judges and things. And I know there was a point in here about judges over in Marion being critical of the clinic or some of the things that were going on in the clinic as part of the advisory committee. And somebody reported that, or apparently that once they indicated they were dissatisfied with some of the operations, these local judges, that there were no more community advisory committees. And that's totally, absolutely not accurate. There's been 2 meetings since then, and the program director met individually with all those judges subsequent to their complaints and so forth. So, there's going to be issues with anything. And things like that. We try to be responsive. We try to be a part of things. We're not, we come out of behavioral health addictions. As I said, I have an abstinence-based model. So it's like we know the field, and we know that some people are appropriate for this level of care, some people aren't. but we do believe it should be available, and none of your counties alone in this region, which is underserved, will support its own clinic merely by its own numbers. But the region in total will. And again, this would be the logical location.
I'd like to ask a question first of our administrator. A needs assessment is normally requested by the people who want to find out about it, right? For example, if...
Maybe Rhonda can answer that.
If this area wanted a needs assessment, wouldn't we have asked for it?
Well, that's certainly one
Isn't that
way to do it. But, you know, in this case, I think that Premier Care approached our county in terms of developing in our region and conducted their own needs assessment.
You were approached before the needs assessment was done?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm going to make a couple comments to you, and this goes back to a little history I have with working with other counties in terms of trying to establish things that we felt were for the good of all counties. And this all transpired, and we have law enforcement here that recall it, when meth was first big here, and it was causing terrible harm to our communities, financially and emotionally, and breaking up families. So I was involved and Commissioner Everett was as well, in forming and establishing a regional task force committee to do a regional treatment facility. And you talk about pulling your hair out. That's what we went through. It was all the good intentions with the meth issues. Other things happened through the state legislature that have helped improve the conditions and the ability for them to both make and distribute that product. Now, I'm not saying that it still isn't a problem, because it still is, but it's been minimized compared to what it was years ago. So maybe the need for that had fallen short, but in the course of the conversation, it really went heavily into mental health issues and the need for, and our focus then, and one of the early questions why I asked you is, where are these people now? Because my concern is if we have too many of any type in our correctional facilities, we can't give them the proper care in correctional facilities for those types of things. And right now, we have a significant issue within our correctional facilities with mental illness issues. And throughout this, and we, John, I think was it 11 or 12 counties we had working together. We formed a group, and it was, and we worked hard, and we worked hard for a number of years. We worked with the legislature, we worked with the state health and human services boards to try to get all this to go through. And the end result was, by the time you got back to each individual county and you got the county people, the county people from in Rhonda's position, they were very protective of their clients and their citizens within their community on what was the best approach for dealing with the treatment itself. There was fear of having a facility where they had to go, in some instances, 80 or 90 miles. You know, we heard testimony, and we took testimony in these things. It was a lot of work that was involved. And in this process, we were told that you know, for the best treatment for these people, it was best to keep them in their local communities. And the more that started to happen, this whole kind of regional approach of what we wanted to do just kind of died a slow death, because we couldn't get beyond that part of it. And I'm just telling you, so and if you're saying that Clay County can't support it now on its own, and that the needs show that it can't do it on its own, you have one heck of a hill to climb. I'm just telling you because I'm being truthful with you, because it is the reality that I have experienced. And the reality that I experienced it in working on it was with significant issues, with many more people involved than the numbers you're talking about. And we couldn't accomplish it. So I just tell you that from what I've worked with. John can share it. We thought it was a good idea, and again, I still think it's a good idea when it comes to finding other ways for people with mental health issues in our jails. But how we're going to get to that, we're constantly working on that, aren't we, Pat? I mean, we're constantly working on that. So I just throw that out to you. I know you're asking, or I think we're supposed to either give either support or non-support. We have our county attorney here. We have our people from our health department. We have our sheriff here. And if the board would like, we could call them up and get their thoughts on this before we would go either way as well. And I would certainly like to hear from for example, our county attorney and county sheriff as to this. And we have the police chief of Moorhead who might also have some issues because you'd like to see this proposed in Moorhead. So I would, if any of them would like to speak to this, I'd sure like to hear from them before, because everybody needs to understand they're asking us for a request of support, and I want to know where to go with this, and I need their help. Yes.
In terms of this, Rhonda, we don't, whether we support or don't support, the state still makes a decision on whether to authorize the facility?
Correct. We would issue a letter, whether we support it or not. We'd want to supply a letter, and that would go along with the application. The state could decide to go ahead and provide the license regardless of the county's position. That has happened in Minnesota. In fact, it recently happened in St. Louis County. And St. Louis County then worked with the Commissioner of Human Services to get that overturned, and that's when they developed their RFP process that I referenced in the board information. But that is the potential, yes.
And then in terms of a facility, have you identified any locations here that you're planning on, or you haven't gotten to that point? And do you typically go into a residential neighborhood or to a commercial?
Kind of our, as we mentioned, we met with Rhonda and a whole group of folks on, I think, December the 10th, possibly is the date. And the same question was posed. Where are you proposing to do this? And honest truth is if you folks are interested in supporting or not being oppositional to the establishment of the program, we would ask you where is appropriate. We would like your input. Typically, we like to stay away from any hot buttons, which would be residential, schools, churches, daycares, somewhere that's private, somewhere that's medical, possibly, space next to a hospital would be excellent. Somewhere that's, not going to be, in somebody's backyard. So we would look for some guidance, some help, some support. We want to have a good working relationship, not an adversarial relationship if we move forward. That's we're not here to create problems for the community. We're here to provide a service that's not being provided. A lot of times the folks, the population we serve, they're probably sometimes more involved in law enforcement, and criminal activity by nature. It's because addiction, a lot of times, leads to addictive behaviors. It's behavioral issues that get you involved with law enforcement. We're not here to make that problem worse. We're here to make that problem better. So having said that, we would typically locate somewhere where you folks said you want us to be.
We typically look at a facility for what's being proposed would be about 3,000 square feet. It would have parking for about 60 cars. We do have our own security on site. Our clinics are probably one of the most stringently regulated types of health care in health care. You've got the DEA, the Pharmacy Board, the state licensure, nationally accredited. For instance, Marion, which was the program that we have that was identified as similar in terms of demographics and so forth, that's Joint Commission accredited. I do not think your local hospital has any more stringent accreditation than Joint Commission. We take it very seriously in terms of what we do and provide comprehensive treatment. We don't put any signage up on the buildings to identify, so
Anonymity is important.
Yeah, and, it's kind of like what Charlie said. We kind of, in the old days, I think people used to, for methadone treatment specifically, where now it's medication-assisted treatment, you can do Suboxone thing. One of the issues there is your doctors, if you have any local doctors doing Suboxone, there's no treatment attached to it typically. They are just writing a prescription and then, putting somebody on Suboxone, but there's no clinical or therapeutic modality to support that. But in the old days, I think people used to they go into these communities and as a consultant, and having my own firm for 30 years, almost 30 years, I used to see it. They kind of try and backdoor, and then all of a sudden, like the commissioners would say, what, we got a what here? And things like that. And that's not our approach. I mean, we're pretty much straightforward. Actually, in Marion,
we met
with the mayor, and that's how we started that process and things.
Well, I know you've talked with us quite a bit this morning, and I know, there were some things written about your program, and you came here and you refuted it in your way on the things that were maybe negatively written about.
The one other thing, I'm sorry, but because it's really kind of, I don't know what you're going to say. The urine screen, yeah, where it was reported that somebody had a warm urine screen in their car or something. For urine screens are all observed. Okay, and we not only personal observation, we have cameras in our clinics as well. And, I mean, what somebody would say they had a urine screen.
In the car when they got pulled over.
Yeah, that was.
I don't know if you read that piece.
Yeah,
but there
it's
was
in
law
here
enforcement
somewhere.
saying that somebody was pulled over with a warm urine specimen as if they were going to provide that to us, but we have observed urine collection. So, I don't know if it was for some other agency that they were working with, but that kind of bothers us. Because, all these things are said, it makes us look like negligent operators, and we really pride ourselves on quite the contrary of that.
Well, I want to thank both of you. We got to move on here pretty soon, but and I don't want to get into somebody's going to comment, and then I don't want this to turn into a debate and rebuttal and all this stuff. We just don't have time for that today. But what I would like to hear, and I'm hoping that one of these gentlemen sitting back here are going to be willing to come up and speak to us on the request to us and if they, why we should or shouldn't be from our local law enforcement or whether it's our county attorney, if we should be supporting this or not. We haven't heard from them, and I want to give them an opportunity to talk. And it looks like Chief Ebbinger is coming up here.
Would you like us to move? So
no, he can talk from there.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. My staff and I have contacted a number of cities in Minnesota that have had methadone treatment centers located in their communities, and I did contact the chief. My staff contacted some command personnel in Marion, Indiana. I agree with you totally. The chief was very supportive. The security within the facility is great. They seldom get calls there. It's what happens outside the facility with the clientele that's attracted to the area that has been a problem for him in his community. And I am fully accepting of the fact that the interior, that your facility itself, you'll probably have adequate security. One of the things that's not been addressed in this study is that we are a part of a over 200,000 plus community, counting our North Dakota partners. And as we saw with the sale of synthetic drugs and the sale of drug paraphernalia, we've become the destination point for that entire metro area for the persons addicted or persons that are using in this community. So I think in addition to the 200 plus clients that you have identified coming from Minnesota counties, we can probably count on at least that many, if not many more, coming over from North Dakota and being present in our community. The Marion, Indiana Police Department has got 20 more officers than I've got for a community with 10,000 fewer people. And the chief has identified this as a real strain on his resources. In talking to the other communities in Brainerd, St. Cloud, Duluth, Bemidji, all of them identify the presence of these clinics as a real strain on their community. A number of the people the addicts that are treated in this program, and again, it's a maintenance program, these people remain drug users, and a number of them relocate to be closer to the clinic. So we can not only view this as people who are transient coming in and out, and by the way, operating vehicles under the influence of the substances they get there, we can anticipate that there will be people that move into our community who require addicted individuals require a large amount of police services. I just do not see this as a facility that will bring resources that we need either to the region or our city without a much larger problem that occurs to our quality of life and to our level of criminal activity here. I've discussed this with County Attorney Melton. I've discussed it with Sheriff Berquist. They pushed me up here as a spokesman. But I think we're all one voice on this, that this is a huge concern for the quality of life of the citizens of Moorhead, for the quality and for the level of crime that we're going to have in the city. And I'm strongly opposed to this.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Sheriff, looks like you want to say something.
I guess I just want to put in a word from the county of the different sheriffs that I spoke to. Of course, they always say go see the police chiefs because they had most of the issues. But one of the big issues that happens on the sheriff's side is they said the number of deaths they had, that their autopsies tripled in a year. That would be all under our responsibility. Plus the fact you brought up, Commissioner Campbell, about the jail. I mean, we're currently, you guys don't know it, but our jail is too small and we house about 20 people a day out. So anything that would increase that would really defeat what we're trying to do. And so I just wanted to make sure we understand that half the time they end up in the jail because they don't have the mental hospitals here that they should be in. But so thank you.
How about any other services, Rhonda, from social service perspective that may have a strain placed on them from a new facility like this?
Well, I think the concern is, as outlined in the information, is that, not only do oftentimes these folks have varying issues, not just the drug dependence. So we may see mental health, we may see child protection concerns, child welfare concerns, other kinds of issues. And again, for residents of Clay County, as we indicated in the information, we don't see the numbers of a facility like this supporting the numbers that we have. I did speak with all of the directors in the other counties as well, and I know the numbers in the needs assessment are really taken from a state report, and they are folks that have received opiate treatment and admissions to opiate treatment. But we don't necessarily see those numbers as reflective of people that would need medication-assisted treatment. Not all of the folks that receive inpatient opiate treatment require medication-assisted treatment. So I think that as I've talked with them, the needs assessment, really, even in our 6-county area, we would be concerned that we would have the numbers. And as the chief said, I think that the physical location of a facility here in Moorhead, again, Premier Care has talked about taking private pay or commercial insurance, folks that would pay privately or commercial insurance. We will have folks from North Dakota coming to Minnesota to receive these services. Not that they would relocate, but if they are individuals that have a multitude of other needs and they experience behaviors while here or decompensate while here, we will be responsible to meet that need over here on the Minnesota side. You hear from me often about services that are already stretched, staff that are already stretched, and this would be a concern as well.
Okay, well, we've gone past our allotted time here. Pat, did you have any?
I think Rhonda pretty much covered it.
Okay. All right. Brian, did you have any comments you want to make?
I think, for me, just what she said, we talked before.
Okay.
I said that I just let him represent what we were.
Okay. You're on the same page with the chief there?
I am.
Okay. Grant?
I think, at least based on the information we received today, I would make a motion to recommend to authorize a letter of non-support for this project.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. So I'm sure you'll go forward with what it is you want to do, but I think after listening to our staff and our law enforcement agencies, at this time, it would be difficult for us to support what you got going forward.
Well, I thank everybody for their time.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll be in a 5-minute recess. We're going to reconvene our meeting, and we're going to go back to our regular schedule here. And our next item is a recommendations from the Planning Committee for financing future correctional facility. Let's keep in mind that what this is this isn't talk about building a new jail today. This is talk about how we are going to prepare for the future to pay for when that day comes when we're closer to reality to have to build, which is not very far away. So anyway, Brian and Sheriff Berquist will let you two lead the discussion, and I might point out that Commissioner myself and Commissioner Wayland also are part of that committee, and we have Julie Savat is here with us, and if Julie wanted to come up, she certainly can to be part of this discussion. She's been involved with it, so but I think what we, and we've actually had in some of these conversations, we've had Lori Johnson, our county auditor treasurer, being involved as far as, again, this discussion level that we've been in is dealing with setting up a funding mechanism for the future construction of a jail. And that's all our focus is on right now, is how we can start to be setting funds aside. And so with that, I will call on our administrator, Mr. Berg, again to start this conversation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. You started it very, very well, described a lot of the issues. We really appreciate that. And it was you, commissioners, and with the assistance of your staff, last April, I'll say, when we held a half-a-day retreat where we talked about some of the long-term goals, and we selected 3 long-term goals that were really issues dealing with Clay County. And at the top of the list rose the jail issue, and you folks have been studying this and planning this for a long time. It's a huge undertaking. We're talking $30 million right now as we discuss, and that isn't something you do just overnight. So I really compliment the commissioners for wanting to push forward with this planned process of having a funding mechanism in place so that when the decision is made, that we can build a correctional facility that meets the needs of Clay County. And I think you heard your discussion this morning again. Our mental illness in our correction facilities is 70–80% of our people have some type of problems that needs to be dealt with. And so you have to have the right facility. Right now, we're warehousing. We're sending 20 roughly a day. That can vary, but we just lost an additional 4 beds by the state. So this is really
I might have to correct you. I think it was 6 beds.
I'm sorry. You're right. Thank you. 6 beds, which I'm getting fired up here.
Back on probation.
Now you made it worse.
So our total is about 20 a day that we have out with the additional 6 beds that we just lost for 2014. So it's a real issue that confronts us, and the committee was formed by this board. It was actually an extension of, or a reduction of a larger committee that was put together some time ago, but this is only to deal with the financing mechanism. So we want to make sure that the public that's watching and the people understanding, we're not planning on building a jail tomorrow. What we want to do is put it together a sustainable financing mechanism so that this is as least intrusive on the taxpayer of Clay County that we can. And so we've looked at so many different issues with this. The committee has met 3 times, and I want to compliment the committee. They really engage in conversation and looking at different ways. We've looked at the current costs of boarding prisoners out of county. It's very expensive. I think next year the budget is reflecting as close we can, because you got transportation costs and other things in there, just shy of $500,000, $481,000. Just for housing prisoners out of county. We've asked Julie Sabat here, our jail administrator, to give us some figures of what it would be in additional cost if we are shut down to the degree that we only operate basically a holding facility with 30-some beds or something like that along that line. And I won't hold her to this because she said this is just a guesstimate. She's putting the figures together, but it would probably be in the area of an additional $700,000 if we reduce that amount. And Department of Corrections may reduce us at that point. They're willing to work with us because we're working on a solution here. So that identifies some of the future costs of boarding prisoners out of county that I just mentioned. We've tried to estimate the cost of a new facility. I use the figure $30 million. Is that the magical number? I don't know. The committee thinks that might be in the ballgame, because we were looking at 21, 23 million back in 2009, and with inflation and the different needs and the population growing and things, that might be kind of close. Timelines on this, we've talked timelines. Will it be 3, 4, 5, 6 years out? We don't know. That's something the committee has talked very aggressively about. It depends upon how this gets funded, how much funds you want in the bank when you start building the jail. That could be really helpful to buy down that bond. I won't say the rate, but the rate is going to be important. We've gone through a period of bonds for government entities in 1 and 2% range for short-term bonds. We don't think that's going to hold for 3-4 years down the road. So we've got some figures put together in 3% and 4% bonds for 20 and 30 years, and you see what the payment is. When you have to bond all that money, the payments get pretty high. So let's hope we can put some in the bank before we start building and ease the pain for everybody. So we've talked about funding sources. We've talked about dates needed for the funds and how much we should raise. I just kind of covered all of that. Well, the first thing one of the first things the committee recommended and this board approved was we did start setting aside in 2014 $50,000 of levy dollars each year. That doesn't get you very far for $1.5 million payment, but it's a start. What we have talked about is you are well aware that there's a wind generation farm that just started. Won't start production until about the first quarter of this year. The construction hopefully is done. It's a farm of 32 towers. 30 of them are in Clay County. We think we're being conservative, but what they're telling us that may generate about $150,000 a year for Clay County. Now, we as a committee would like to ask your support in obligating those wind-generating funds, whether it be 150, 160, or 140 on an annual basis starting in 2015, that if you would at least acknowledge or pass a resolution that you want to obligate those funds. The commission can do things from year to year, whatever your needs are, but that's one of the things that we would like you to do.
Brian, can I just interrupt you there on that one? And we had that discussion, and I think it's fine, but I did raise the concern in that because the revenues are new, so is the wind tower operation and everything, and I just think it would be in our best interest to keep a small portion of that unreserved for unknown issues that may come up that we might have to deal with that area itself.
Sure.
You know, so whether we would commit to 80% of the funds, I think that something like that would be fine. But I really, to say put all 100% towards that, not with the uncertainty of knowing that we might have future expenses associated with, I think we would be making a mistake there. But
sure,
you know, but I certainly, you know, and we're kind of guessing here anyway, to some degree. But
we are.
But I would certainly encourage maybe an 80% commitment of those funds.
Sure.
That would be a suggestion I would have. But why don't you just continue?
Yeah, very good. And Commissioner Campbell brought that up during our committee meeting, that you know, there's going to be other administrative costs, and the roads may need something or whatever too. So, and what we've done for planning purposes is based on the information that the wind energy company provided us. We were trying to be conservative about 150,000. So yeah, it may range in that 130 to 150, that even at the 80% of the county share, because there's a small amount, like 9% goes to the schools, and I think it's 11% or 10% or something goes to the township in which they locate as well. So, but the county does get the lion's share of it. So that, and maybe we can come back to the resolutions, but that's what we're asking. The other issue that we've really been kind of talking a lot about is obligating, as our current bonds mature, that we obligate 75% of the dollars that we are now paying for those bond payments be obligated to fund the jail. And you'll see a little spreadsheet on the back page, and we probably should kind of just run through that just a little bit. You see the levy dollars that we've talked about. It's 50. We would like to, and that'll have to be a year-by-year decision of this board, add $50,000 for 6 years, so that we would be in the range of $300 or $300,000 per year after the 6 years. And with the wind energy, you can see in the third column, we're talking about $150,000 starting in year 2015. Well, under the bond maturity column, you'll see that in 2018, we have a figure of $460,000 under bond maturity. Now, that is 75% of the amount of our payment that is maturing. So that's 75%. So as Commissioner Campbell said, not to utilize all of those dollars, but obligate that percentage. And then you'll see there's 2 or 3 bonds. I want to say, I think Stacy said there were 8 bonds that were outstanding. I think there's probably 6 that are paid for by county levy dollars. So it's only the county levy dollars that are included in here, not the highway construction bond that we had just done a year ago or so. But as you'll see, that bond maturity amount does mature in about 2022, and we would be up to $822,000. And if we do have $150,000 worth of energy tax, and we do continue to assess the $50,000 and add the $50,000 for 6 years, we have $300,000. So by the year 2022, we would have revenues of about $1.271 million on an annual basis, if that all comes to fruition. And we would hope that we're in the planning process. We've had 3 meetings. I think we've made a lot of progress in regards to getting to this, but we felt, in fact, the commissioners on the committee felt it'd be important that we get this to you, update you on it very soon, and before we start looking at other projects and things. We have decided in the long term, over the next 5 years, that this is the #1 priority, that we look at funding. And I know there's a lot of other needs you have to consider, but this is high on the list. So,
Brian, can I make a comment while we're right here too on this? You know, for the public who might be watching out there and they're wondering, well, gee whiz, if we didn't do this, these bonds are up, and then maybe just our taxes could go down. Thinking that's another option. The fact of the matter is their taxes won't go down because the level of increased cost to the operations of the jail will go up. People have to understand that's significant. We are going to see more and more reductions to our abilities to operate that facility. Then they're going to be starting to grant us more beds. Those days are done. And the facility, it's one that the state of Minnesota is watching very closely. I think both Julie and the sheriff can attest to that. And as we said, we're losing 6 beds this year. Each year, that can go down more and more. So just so people know that those dollars, just if we didn't do this and we didn't plan for this, they're dollars that'll still need to be spent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian, it's my understanding that the state legislature would allow some kind of sales tax for this kind of situation. Is that true? And if it is true, was that ever discussed by the committee? And if it was discussed, what were the results of that discussion?
Mr. Chair.
You want me to take that?
Sure, go ahead.
It certainly has been discussed. The method in doing that would be to first seek the approval from the legislature, and by that we would have to go in there and get approval from them to have this sales tax. We certainly looked at what Cass County did with their local sales tax and how they were able to actually raise that revenue in a very short time and built that jail and even had a cushion for additions. They did it in 3 years. Now, our sales tax collections in Clay County wouldn't afford us to be able to do it that fast. But one of the things that we are looking at in terms of this, the first step today, I think, was what we had asked for were 2 recommendations to set aside the funds on the wind energy and on these bonds. But we have asked our auditor to put together for us, Wayne, different scenarios about, in addition to these fundings, what would a 3-year or a 5-year sales tax collection do to help offset everything else here. Our goal in working on this is to keep the property tax in Clay County neutral over it. That's our goal. Our goal is to be able to build this facility and not see significant increases in our real estate taxes. We understand the importance and significance of our neighbors and how Moorhead needs to be competitive with across the river. We're at a lot of disadvantages, and this is one way if we could build this new facility. And quite frankly, we helped build their jail in Cass County with the sales tax, and maybe they can help build ours with a sales tax over here. But we have to have a lot of discussions on that. We would need to talk with our business communities to make sure that they're on board here. We have a couple of options because it's going to have to be done, and the options are we're either going to have to find alternative ways to fund the facility, or we're going to have to resort to property tax. And I don't think there's any one commissioner on this board who wants to use the property tax mechanism to pay for the jail.
That was my question. Countywide sales tax, be it 0.5% or 1% for a short period of time, to me, would be much more painless than increasing people's property tax. But that is being looked at from what you said.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Did I cover that?
Except that I think it doesn't require a referendum.
Yes, and I think you were going to go down that road, but it's a required referendum on a sales tax, and then it has to go to the legislature for approval. And we've talked about some other discussions on sales tax as well, too, that we have, that we just got into last time. And yes, we're trying to look at drawing in revenues from a variety of sources so that this doesn't get Because if you were to build a jail today and went out and sold bonds for $25 or $30 million, you can see what the payment is for a 3% bond over 30 years. Our payment's $1.5 million a year. That would be a huge dump onto the property tax owner in this county. And if we can do it gradually, I think that's what the taxpayers want. And I think, and I hate to say painlessly because it's going to be some pain, any tax is, but this needs to happen. It needs to happen in the future. Just financially, we're spending $500,000. It could go up an additional $7. Well, we're at $1.2 million. And then there's lots of problems of housing prisoners out with attorneys, with judge appearances, with family visitations, with medical issues. There's lots of things. So it really needs to be looked at. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd ask for...
Yeah, so we're down into asking the board to act on the two recommendations, just basically in establishing, and by the way, by doing this, I think it's going to send a good message to our Department of Corrections folks in St. Paul. They're going to be happy that we're doing some things to move forward. But I would, on these resolutions, it does talk about the 75% on the bond, but I would like to encourage the board to think about not 100%, but maybe 80% on the wind tower one, at least for now.
I'd make that motion on the wind energy tax dedicated to correctional facility funding, that we dedicate 80% of that to the correctional plan.
I'll second that motion.
Second. Okay. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right. And
Mr.
then,
Chair,
yes.
I move the next resolution, 75% of retired debt payments.
Second.
Set aside for corrections. Okay. And we have a second. Okay. Any further discussion on that? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
And Mr. Chair, now we have time for Julie's prepared comments.
Thank you. They just called. They need her right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I think at this time, I'm going to take the agenda edition that I have here, and on January 8th, a letter was written to myself as the chairman of the Clay County Board of Commissioners, and it says, "Dear Kevin, it is time for me to submit my resignation. I have enjoyed my work as a public servant for the last 36 years. It has been an honor to be elected so many times by the Clay County constituents. I've been very fortunate to have worked with so many terrific people. My staff knows their jobs well, so I am confident the Clay County official records will be maintained. I have accepted a position as the Moms Minnesota Official Marriage System Coordinator. I'll be coordinating efforts with all 87 counties to maintain the data and websites Moms manages for marriage records. This year, Moms will be expanding into marriage ordination credentials, an e-marriage system, and a statewide military discharge search and request system for county veteran service officers. My last day with Clay County will be March 4th, 2014. I would be happy to meet to discuss the transition of my duties to my successor. I wish Clay County and all of its employees much success in the coming years. Sincerely, Bonnie Rader." And I just want to say that I've known Bonnie for many years, and it's been certainly a delight having her as our recorder. And as she said, the citizens of Clay County truly thought she did a fantastic job.
Mr. Chair, do we need to act on this?
Well, I think what typically is done is we accept the letter of resignation to start with, and then I can comment what we'll do after that.
I move to accept Ms. Rader's letter.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Could I add that we put regretfully?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Most great. So we can see here that her last day is March 4th, and I had an opportunity to talk with our administrator on this a little bit. And what I would like to do is maybe myself as chair and Commissioner Everett as vice chair to visit with Brian and maybe to get a little bit of knowledge and understanding of who currently in that office might have the ability to take over for the remainder of Bonnie's term, because it will be our duty to appoint somebody to fill out the remainder of her term, which I believe was going to be up this year. So if that's okay with the board, I'd like to just pursue that and then come back to you or maybe through Brian with a recommendation on who we should appoint.
Mr. Chair, I would make that motion that you and the vice chair do that with your meetings per diem, go with that.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? I think we could probably do without per diem. It's probably going to just be one meeting, but okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. And again, congratulations also to Bonnie on her new position. Okay, we'll go to review the committee appointments. Vicki has, as she does always so well, has completed the new chart. Has everybody looked through theirs and everybody's satisfied here? All right. You know what that does? That means we're good to go.
Wait, one question.
Okay, you have one question? All right.
No, it's here, I didn't see the extension thing.
Okay. And I do want to get over there and tell them that I was glad to be there, and my intentions maybe will be get back on there. This would be a good year for John to be on there. Okay, so I think we're, Vicki, I think we're set. Any notifications that would need to go on these can go. Do we want a motion to formally adopt this? I think we should.
So moved.
Okay. Second. Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carried. All right, your committees are established. Okay, committee reports and updates. Frank, how about starting with you today?
Well, Tuesday when I was at that bid opening, which we pretty well discussed and ready, so we won't go into that. Wednesday, I was at Linden for a regional dispatch center. There four cities, Hawley, Dilworth, Linden, Barnesville, are very concerned about the way they're being taxed on the dispatch center. And they would like a committee set up, I guess, to look at that, if we do want to look at it differently or not. I don't know whether we want to pursue that or not, but they're very concerned about, they feel they're being taxed doubled because they're being taxed as a county resident and they're also being taxed as the cities again, having regional dispatch, because they have police departments. So they're being taxed. There are cities being taxed again. I mean, they have an assessment from the dispatch center that these cities have to be taxed, and they feel there's double taxation on that. So there was a long discussion of that. I don't know whether we want to get together as a committee to look at that, or whether we're the ones that do that, or whether the dispatch center does that.
Yeah, I think we need to get Sheriff Berquist involved with this too, and we have to understand how it was originally designed, and maybe who came on board later might also be making a difference here, and because it could have potentially changed formulas. That
probably Brian's more to add on that too. He was at that meeting also.
Yeah, Brian would be another good one.
Then on Thursday at the Soil and Water Conservation District meeting, there was some discussion on a bill that was passed last year where people who have land that's assessed at the agricultural rate, and if they put it into a conservation program, it's still going to be assessed at the agricultural rate. Even though they're not getting the whole revenue that they used to get off that land, and they feel, the Soil and Water Conservation District feel this is the deterrent for people to go into these conservation programs. So trying to get a little bit more information on that law that was passed. It was part of a bill, omnibus bill that was passed. There was an attachment to it, and I've contacted Representative Paul Marker on this, and he'll give me some more information on that. That's it.
Frank. Brent?
Let's see, I had, the jail committee, and we already had a discussion on that, and Beyond the Yellow Ribbon Committee, I had a meeting on that, and things are going well with Beyond the Yellow Ribbon, and they're very supportive of our County Veteran Service Office and some of the projects that he's got going. That's it for me.
I was involved with the second interview for Kirk Rosenberger last Tuesday, together with Kevin and Dave Overbo and Brian and Darren, and we made the recommendation that you acted on today. That was very positive, I think. On Wednesday, I attended a awards committee meeting for extension, where we choose there's 3 different farm family awards that are given out, named by the county committee and given out by, one is NDSU, one is at Farm Fest, and the other is the Valley Farmer and Homemaker of the Year Award. So we made the recommendations for those and haven't heard yet if the people accepted that or not. We do that each year, and it's a good meeting because we get to talk about the number of people that are recommended, nominated, and so on, and who's most deserving. We also on Wednesday had a meeting with the campaign committee for the Historical Society, and that was pretty routine business and reporting and such. And yesterday I had attended a meeting with the Local Foods Initiative that's sponsored by our public health, as well as part of the MetroCog plan that we approved last fall. And it was a meeting primarily of growers, trying to figure out if there's, where they want us to go with this committee and whether or not they find the meeting together helpful. And a number of them expressed that it is helpful. They've met other growers as well as other buyers, and find it very helpful to do that. So that was all.
Thank you, Dan.
Tuesday, January 7th, Ward Planning Commission, general business. We made revisions for the zoning of the Dorothy Day House, forwarded updates in the city code regarding off-street parking to the city council. We elected Gary Schultz as the chair of the Planning Commission for 2014, and we appointed Roger Busher to be the MetroCog representative for 2014. Thursday, January 9th, Local Advisory Council for Children's Mental Health. General business, we went over and refined the 2014 work plan, and then we had agency reports from Clay County Collaborative, Lakeland Mental Health, and Prairie St. John's. Friday, January 10th, planning entrance meeting with Bob Johnson, the state auditor, for the year ending December 31st, 2013. Bob went over in detail what is expected of both Clay County and the state auditor's office. Many areas were touched upon. Lori Johnson was in attendance. Kevin and Brian were also there, and will most likely have other items to add on this. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and myself, I had 2 of them have been touched on. We had the jail committee, and of course the committee that where we did the second interview for the solid waste management position. And then my only other one for that week as well was the state audit planning and entrance meeting, as far as what to expect from the state audit for 2014. And Wayne gave a good report on that. And I just want to add, there was one significant area that Bob spent a lot of time talking to us about, and that was to really getting all of our department managers to be thinking and understanding about fraud. I think, Brian, you heard that well, and he gave an awful lot of good, we're not trying to say there is any, but everywhere you go, there can be some. And the best way you can do that is to minimize the opportunities for it. And so I think Brian's going to be taking that through his management meetings and talking about that. And it's never an easy subject to talk about, but it's one that's important. So that's all I have. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A lot of the points have been covered already. I spent some time with the appointed elected officials. If you remember right, the last 2 years, you've passed resolutions supporting the idea of appointing the auditor, treasurer, and recorder. And the plan this year, the legislature doesn't meet till February 25th, I believe, and the plan is to address this immediately, and they say, the people that we've been dealing with on this say that the legislature has, this is a continuation of last legislative session, so they hope to just bring, since the bill is already passed on the floor of the Senate, is to put it on the floor of the House, hopefully get a pass, get the governor's signature, and still get this done this year. That's the plan, if things can move that smoothly. So we've been doing a little bit of work on that in recent days. And I guess that's what I wanted from you folks. I could certainly bring another resolution forward, but the personalities haven't changed, and I haven't heard any feedback on it. Should we look at this as just a continuation and work on it from that respect then? Okay, very good. Financing the correction facility, you've already had plenty of that. We had the follow-up interview, which I'm really excited about getting Mr. Rosenberger on board. The DMV bid opening we had, and some follow-up work on that has gone well. We had a diversion administrative advisory meeting last Wednesday, and just kind of getting ready for the year and moving things forward, talking about the planned trip, the budgeting issues, and things like that. Had some personnel evaluations, some personnel policy issues that Darren and I have discussed. Met with Bonnie to talk about that situation. The Rural Cities Dispatch, I think that was last Wednesday night. We spent quite a bit of time. We spent about an hour and a half with those. And Commissioner Everett, I apologize to you for missing that meeting. Matt thought I was going to inform the commissioners on it. So now next time you'll get 2 notifications the next time we'll have it. So I dropped the ball on that. He thought I was going to notify you guys. Normally the departments tend to notify the commissioners, so I apologize for that. We had, I think we had a good discussion. We had a long discussion. I think we'll work something out on them, even if it's just educating them on all of the services that they get out of Dispatch 911. They're looking at they feel that that's a county responsibility from the emergency response, the 911 services. And we're trying to say, from the electronic citations, the computers, the communication with the county attorney's office, all that is in addition to it and needs to be paid for. Those are administrative costs that police departments need to support their departments. So that's kind of the road that we're going down with that. State auditors meeting, that's already been discussed. We did have a meeting last Friday with Metro COG. Wade had organized this with the 4 administrators, the Fargo, Moorhead, Clay, and Cass counties. And it's in response to, of course, the explosion and the fire out at Castleton. And boy, we realize how big of a gorilla this is in the closet. And it isn't only Fargo, Moorhead, that you realize how many hundreds of communities like that these transport trains go through. So we feel, though, that we owe it to you folks and to our constituents to make sure that our emergency operational plans are up to date and that we have a plan in place and look at options. The feds are talking about it, our elected representatives. So it's much bigger than our community, but we have to look at what we have control of in our communities and assure you guys that we're doing the best job we can. So we'll push forward on that a little bit, keep you guys informed if there's some additional meetings. I think there's going to be one coming up that's going to involve legislators on both sides, the federal legislature on both sides. So I'll certainly send something out on that when there's a date established. So and I'll be at the Red River Basin Conference the next couple of days, certainly be in the area, so I'll certainly be available. Give me a call, email me, text me, or anything. I'll be here. So with that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Brian, I thought they all would be there, so you wouldn't have to text them. You could just talk to them.
I don't know if that's necessarily correct.
We might be able to pop in from time to time. I just want to make one more comment, too. I forgot to mention that I did go last night and attend the swearing-in ceremonies for the new mayor of Moorhead, as well as the council members, and there was a lively audience there, and I think they were excited to see these new people being put into office, and I think I can say for all of us here, we wish them all well, and we look forward to working together with them. So with that, we are adjourned.